There's the nice screen. Overcoming illusion and the pursuit of happiness. The topic was picked because before the pandemic hit, I was invited to speak at University of Illinois in Chicago. And this was the topic. I changed it somewhat because it's nice to change things every now and then. But I'm very familiar with an audience that wishes to find happiness and somehow runs into a few other things besides what they're looking for. So what's real happiness? I remember this slide very clearly, the matrix slide. So should we take the blue pill or the red pill? Truth or not the truth, illusion? We're going to go for the truth. One way to just start right away making declarative statements, but it's often good to be open-minded and inquisitive. So we'll start with some questions. We don't want it to be, but we find at times at least, life is difficult. Why is it? And since we want a happiness that's sustaining and joyful, how do we find it? How do I learn to be happy? A beginning point is, just as the title is, we have to make some distinction between what real happiness is, or reality, and what illusory happiness is. So we'll start with the illusory happiness first. You recognize this lady? That's an artist's depiction of Maya. You all familiar with at least the concept, but there she is. Maya means illusion, or a covering of a living entity to think something that isn't is what is, and what is what isn't. That's what Maya does. She is a deluding potency that covers living entities when they desire happiness that isn't what real happiness is. That's what Maya does. You notice in the center, there's three personalities. They're the presiding personalities over the modes of nature. Goodness, passion, ignorance. The presiding personalities are pictured here. Over on the right side, that's Lord Shiva. He presides over the mode of ignorance. In the left side, with four heads, that's Brahma. He's presiding over passion, the creative features of material nature. And Vishnu is in the center. He's in the maintenance department. He maintains the creation. So working through the three modes, Maya's got us covered. And once covered, it's not so easy to get free from that influence of Maya. That's the illusion image. So here we are searching for happiness, influenced by illusion, and a common phrase, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die. It's not a new idea. It's a very old idea. There's a personality named Charvak Muni who was a proponent of this one. You don't know how long you're going to live, so while you're alive, beg, borrow, or steal, or get those objects that bring enjoyment, because that's what enjoyment is, getting objects, contacting those objects, finding pleasure in objects of the senses. Call it hedonism. But the net effect of that approach is illustrated here. It's like a lady taking nice care of a bird cage without attending to the bird that's within. And eventually, you don't feed the bird within, the bird's going to croak. Poor bird. Real happiness requires a holistic picture of what our needs are. And of course, there are spiritual needs. That's the bird in the cage that looked like he's finished. There's physical, there's mental, there's emotional needs. And in a holistic way, those needs need to be attended to. That's what real happiness is, but you have to align them properly. Here's some nice text from Krishna's teaching to Uddhava. You know who is Uddhava? You know who is Arjuna? Arjuna. So Arjuna is Krishna's cousin. Arjuna's mother and Krishna's father were brother and sister. Krishna's father's name was Vasudeva, and Arjuna's mother was Kunti, and Kunti and Vasudeva were brother and sister, so they're cousins. But Vasudeva had 9 other brothers, or 9 brothers, and one of those brothers was the father of Uddhava, so he's also a cousin. And because you've been around a while, you know the childhood of Krishna was spent in Vrindavan. Krishna left Vrindavan when he was 10 years and 8 months old. 10 years and 8 months old, and he was taken to Mathura to take part in a festival. But actually the festival was a plan to kill Krishna. It didn't work out for the man who was trying to kill Krishna. He got killed. That was Kamsa. And then Krishna's cousin, Uddhava, was there in Mathura. And for the balance of Krishna's life, Uddhava was his constant companion. Uddhava was his constant companion. Very dear, very, very, very dear. And towards the end, Krishna left this world 125 years after he made his appearance. And Uddhava, being as close to Krishna as he was, he understood. He's going to leave. So Uddhava paid a private visit to Krishna. Take me with you. Please don't leave me behind. I know that you plan to leave. And he asked many, many, many questions. There's a very profound section, like Bhagavad Gita is kind of an introductory Krishna speaking to Arjuna, and Krishna speaking to his other cousin, or one other cousin, Uddhava. There is a major section of the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This verse is taken from that. A conditioned soul undergoes great trouble to obtain a little happiness after struggling in material life, which is full of hardship and hypocrisy. One may receive a little sense gratification, but this illusory pleasure in no way offsets the burden of suffering one must bear to obtain it. The person who did the illustration is obvious. A donkey chasing a carrot, or a foolish person chasing the happiness that comes from senses contacting sense objects, and there's a buzz. And that happiness pursuit is quite difficult. So the question, why is life difficult? This is Krishna's, one of the Krishna's way of explaining. And one of the impacts that effort has is people, it's never satisfying. And so we always want more, whatever it is. And that's a problem because it's a type of greed. And you've seen statistics, I'm sure. The rate at which people are consuming the resources of nature, presently, we need about 2.5 to 3 planets. The problem is there's only one. And so people fight over resources because of greed. So strife and conflict and other things are the result. It's one of those corollary problems with trying to become the enjoyer. How to be satisfied with the one planet and its natural arrangements. Some of you, because you've been around a while, you have some understanding of what the Vedic texts say. Here's one. From Ishopanishad. Sound familiar? Ishopanishad? No. You've heard the Upanishads? Yes. The Isha is the number one of 108 principal Upanishads. And there's a verse that says, I'll just say it in simple English. There's an arrangement for everyone's necessities. And we're entitled to accept that which is our necessities for life. Not taking other things beyond our necessities, knowing well to whom they belong, because everything belongs to the source that everything comes from. It's really simple. Really simple. Everything comes from a source. And that which everything comes from is actually the owner of that which comes from the source. So that source, Isha, means controller, is making arrangements, just like a father makes arrangements for the necessities of their family members. And the living entities that are children of God, he makes arrangement. But supposing someone over here wants more than what they require, it means someone over there is going to be deprived of what they require. So what to do? Letting go of greed, accepting what we require, and respecting others also have needs, and the Father is taking care of the needs. We just have to respect those arrangements. Here's another illustration. If you see in the lower left of the painting, there's a sword. This is from that same Uddhava Gita section, same chapter. The network of material desires is created when one falsely thinks he can establish himself permanently in the material world. This binding network of desires should be cut by the sword of detachment. That's the sword at the bottom. Otherwise, one will be forced to wander in the illusory network of Maya with no understanding of liberated life on the spiritual platform. There's the Maya word again, and we saw the Maya image. So Maya means to delude us in thinking that something that is not is reality, and something that is reality is not reality. It's clever. A lot of people are caught up in Maya because she's a very strong force. So the recommendation is detachment. The sword of detachment can cut that affinity of the network of desires that lead us to miserable life and suffering and struggling life Here's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So this is more familiar territory for everyone here. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. No, we want pleasure and we want happiness, so that the indication of Bhagavad Gita is pointing us in the direction is not over there of that which is both limited and temporary. Go over here, which is not limited and eternal. Unlimited. And that unlimited and eternal is within us. It's the soul. The soul doesn't have a beginning and an end. And the happiness of the soul also naturally, when awakened, is within. And when one is finding, this is from that section, where one is finding happiness within, one can easily not be distracted by things that are limited and temporary. Illusory happiness. Say it again. The foundation for real happiness and the sword of detachment is finding real happiness within. Not just negation, it's finding real happiness within. The person in the image up here is Prahlad. Prahlad? Yes, some are nodding yes. You're smiling, not only nodding yes. Prahlad, even he was a small boy, of course he grew up and became a king, but when he was a small boy he understood about reality and illusion. Here's his words. One is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, that means the network of senses reaching out to find happiness out there somewhere. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress begin. It's kind of like cheating, but it's Maya. Because in the world of duality, that which looks like reality is illusion, and that which is illusion looks like reality. So you go for what looks like reality, but it's illusion, and instead of happiness, you get the opposite. Instead of happiness, you get distress. So supposing you don't strive for that happiness, you look for happiness within. That's the spiritual happiness. By its nature, sense pleasure mandates renunciation of enjoyment, or if we attempt to have pleasure constantly, it becomes repulsive. The senses are limited, and the pleasure of the senses is limited, and it's temporary. And when you overindulge, it becomes like, I have to give it up. It becomes repulsive. Or in the language of Bhagavad Gita, it burns like fire. Dushparena analena cha, if you like Sanskrit. Anala means fire. It's just the nature of sense pleasure. And when the whole show is over, you're a musician, you probably know who that is, right? It's the Who. The limited and temporary and whatever it is that you've accumulated and whatever it is, poof, then you start over again. And do it all over again. And how many times? Until one gets a sense that there must be a better option. this is sharing. We had a very nice gathering at our farm in mid Pennsylvania. Nice place called Gita Nagari. Really nice. It was in April, and people were like, they wanted to get away from the four walls because COVID had kind of lifted. Anyways, it was a nice experience. There were 100 people that came, and the groups were divided into four, 25 and 25 and 25, and diverse activities of some yoga, some learning about cow protection and learning about the farm and getting their hands in the soil and et cetera, things. Then one of the sessions was meet the monk. I was the monk. So 25 people I've never seen before were sitting together. And it's like, what do you guys want to talk about? And all four groups, the first thing is, how'd you get started? How'd you get into this? So, with a long story short, one of the things that happened during my college days is I realized there's got to be an alternative. It was three parts. There's a higher reality. I know. I'm fully confident there is a higher reality than this. Second, I know that I don't know what it is. That's important to know that you don't know. And the third is also important. I want to know. And that's how I got started. It's this an inquisitive spirit. And then when I didn't even know that there were doors, I found doors, and the doors opened. I went through the doors and found very interesting things on the other side of those doors, and more doors. It was a nice journey. It was a big adventure. Probably something similar to all of you in some ways, each with our own little story. But there is a higher reality, and there is a higher happiness, or a real happiness, as opposed to illusion. And this is what I mentioned before, the holistic picture of self. The self at the center of mental, intellectual, and bodily is spiritual. And the center of that spiritual is that little skinny guy in the middle. That's the soul. That's us. So with that spark of life that's within, that's animating mental, intellectual, and bodily functions. And to bring real spiritual happiness is to align all of those with who we really are. I don't know if you've all had a chance to view a film that was made in honor of Prabhupada. I forget the title, it's a long title. The Hare Krishna movement, the person who started it all, or something like that. Some of you have seen it? It's available online. You can go look if you like. So one of the little sections I like very much is a talk show, and the interviewer introduced Prabhupada, Swamiji. This is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So we're going to take messages from callers. The first caller, what's the purpose of life? Prabhupada's answer, to know yourself. And he elaborated, there's obstacles to knowing yourself, there's hardships to stand in the way of knowing yourself. To remove those obstacles and come to the place where you know yourself. And that was it. And the interviewer said, so, know yourself. Prabhupada, know yourself. Interviewer, know yourself. Like very clear. It's very simple. Very simple. Because knowing yourself includes the larger picture. There's the self and there's needs. There's bodily needs, for sure. There's mental needs, for sure. There's intellectual needs, for sure. And they're integrated. When they're integrated, centered around knowing who you are, then there's fulfillment. And there's the sense of happiness on all those levels, mental, intellectual, and bodily. Here's another nice verse. Material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest happiness. This is again from that Uddhava Gita section of the Bhagavatam. Material desire is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest happiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. Because you're kind of been around a while, the background of this is Uddhava asked a question. Uddhava wanted to know, why do I suffer? Which is one of our starting questions. Why is life difficult? Why do I suffer? And to answer, Krishna told the story. And the story was the story of a Brahmin who was a miser. And he was such a miser that he didn't take care of his children, didn't take care of his wife. He just hoarded money and accumulated money. And they were very unhappy with him because he was such a miser. So what happened was, in course of time, he lost everything without all the details. And then people rejected him because he had been so cruel as a miser. And he tried to find happiness as a pauper. Couldn't find happiness couldn't find happiness. And then he started pondering and reflecting inwardly, why is this suffering? And then it comes back to the same point. Because of material desire, or desire for finding happiness outside yourself by contact, same as the earlier message, by contacting objects, searching for happiness through those objects and squeezing pleasure out of the objects. It's the cause of the greatest unhappiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. The image is showing a bird that was in a cage, now the bird's flying. He's free. This is supposed to be a recording of Here Comes the Sun. You recognize that one. A liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. Now that's yoga. It's not just withdrawing the senses from objects, but directing the inner senses, particularly the mind, but other inner senses, sensory power, towards the Supreme. And then you do what you do in the world in that consciousness. You act in the world in that consciousness while the mind is concentrating. So, in the language of Bhagavad Gita, perform your prescribed duties. You live in the world and you do stuff in a nice way. And inwardly, the mind is on the Supreme. And that's what spiritual happiness is in everyday practical life. Here's another text from chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 6 is describing the meditational yoga, dhyan, which means a type of meditation. And as that dhyan or meditation matures, it becomes really concentrated. So here's the text. See the self by the pure mind, and to relish and rejoice in the self in that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses, established thus one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So that's a very simple expression of spiritual happiness. Now, this chapter 6 is dealing with the restraining the senses and sitting in a yoga posture and concentrating within. At the end of this chapter, it introduces practical activity in the world, senses engaging with sense objects, but in the state of meditation upon the Supreme. That's bhakti, the yoga of love. We're almost done. You'll be happy to hear. Deliberate on this fully, then do what you wish to do. That's how Krishna concludes Bhagavad Gita. Now, I left out a lot of slides because I was thinking the audience would be like the audience from when I was visiting here before. I wasn't thinking it's going to be all of you who've been around for so long. But you get this, it's a skeleton, a basic structure of the sense of illusory happiness and the sense of real happiness. In order to experience in a consistent fashion, especially real happiness, there has to be a willingness, at least gradually, to let go of the standard of happiness is found in the objects of the senses out there, and my senses being able to reach and contact them and squeeze some pleasure out of those objects. When that subsides, it makes it easier to find a happiness within. And as this previous text is saying, experiencing that when there's no greater gain and one never departs from it, even in the greatest of difficulties. Something that I like to do, well, a little sharing because of time. How I got started was at a university that I was attending as an undergraduate. And that period of time was the Vietnamese War time. And it was the counterculture, peace, love, protesting war, and searching for alternatives. And I was, in one sense, a product of my times. And I wanted to know what's the alternative, not just a notional thing, but experiencing it within, not just accept somebody's words for it, but experiencing it. It was like I was driven by that confidence. There is such a reality, there is such a happiness, and searching. Somebody gave me a Bhagavad Gita. I'll do it a little bit longer. I had a philosophy class where I made a friendship with the professor outside of class because he was just such a nice person. We did things together. And one of the things we did was he read to me poetry that he wrote. And he was a Taoist. I didn't know what Taoism was at the time, but I understood later. It was, go with the flow. That's Taoism. He explained that Taoism is when you want to cross a river, you just wade across the river. And if you're a yogi, you walk across the river. It's the transcendentalist. by mystic power. So he was a Taoist, go with the flow person. And in the course of time, he gave me a Bhagavad Gita. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a book of poetry because he used to recite poetry. So I was carrying it around along with my stack of books. And another friend said, "Oh, I have one of those, but it's a different version. Here, you take mine." So now I have two Bhagavad Gita. I didn't even know how to pronounce the title. So I put two and two together and said, wow, if there's two versions, there's probably some more. So I went to the library, and sure enough, there were 5 additional versions of Bhagavad Gita. So I checked all 5 out, plus my 2, and read all 7, and I came to 2 conclusions. It's not a book of poetry, and I don't understand it. Some time passed, and somebody gave me version number 8. And I started reading version number 8, and I found it was real easy to understand. And I was puzzled. Why is this easy? And the other 7 I couldn't understand. But I liked it, so I kept reading. And remember, the inquisitive spirit was behind all this. That's why the door that was opening, that I didn't even know there was a door before. And as I kept reading, then it became clear why it was easy to understand. Because Bhagavad Gita is a process of descending knowledge, not by scholarship, get a flashlight and look for the sun. That's not how you find the sun. It's self-luminous. So Bhagavad Gita is meant to be received in this descending fashion. And so after reading it, and then one thing after, slowly, I was like in a contentious mood. I didn't want to take anybody's word for anything. But slowly, the process became clear, and pursued it further. Because it's meant to, and if received carefully, it provides a natural happiness within. To go further with that happiness within, just repeating it for the 3rd time, 4th time really, there has to be some willingness to let go of that other model that's not working so well. You don't have to be like fanatic or impulsive or something, but a willingness to let go so that this other happiness can be experienced. And slowly, the covering, the Maya covering, starts to weaken, and the spiritual happiness starts to become stronger. And that's our topic for this evening. Overcoming illusion and finding real happiness. That's what Bhagavad Gita is meant for. And let's see. I don't know. Some of you I've seen. We've met. Our musicians, we've met before. Some others. I don't know how you are doing in your practices and your spiritual evolution and stuff. So I have no idea how to touch on those things that will be meaningful to you. So I think I'll just provide the opportunity for you to say whatever you want to say. We'll discuss. Noisy refrigerator.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this beautiful class. So, Hare Krishna. It seems so nicely said to get from Maya and illusion to be cleared
Yeah.
or have the illusion taken away. But I have found, especially recently, there's a whole lot of work, and it's really hard to find that equanimity and that balance. And it can be daunting and it can be frustrating. And instead of going from A to Z, there's a whole lot of letters in between. And I just am at a point in my growth where I'm trying to let go of so much, and family is saying I'm a fanatic, enough with this spiritual stuff, get a job, get a life, and being able to still find that equanimity and that peace within can be super challenging.
Yeah.
So can you speak on that?
Your personal experience of what you just said, and probably every one of us, and our experience of what you just said is the script is different, but the principles are quite same. Let's take two or three things. One is from A to Z, there's a lot of letters in between. So something that Krishna says to Uddhava will be very helpful. Yeah, it's the "I'm not there yet" message. If I understand there's the goal, and I'm not there yet, I'm here, and there's this big gap between what the goal is and where I am, and sometimes I get glimmers of, I'm getting there, and then sometimes I get the feeling that, the sine curve is going down. There's valleys instead of hills, and then valleys instead of hills. So that's the standard. So how do you handle that? That's your question. It's acceptance and progress in two words. Acceptance, this is where I am. It doesn't diminish where I want to be. It doesn't I can feel discouraged, but I don't doubt that that's where I want to be, and I don't doubt that there is that reality. And I've met people that are closer to that goal than I am, and I find their character and quality, et cetera, to be something I wish, but I'm here. And, so what Krishna is advice to Uddhava is my advice to you. Acceptance, this is where I am. Don't feel badly about this is where I am, it's where I am. And you continue, his advice to Uddhava, such a person should continue with where they are, what their capacity is, knowing that these other indulgences, specifically the not letting go part, is there's consequences. It's not doesn't bring a smile. The consequences are, but that's part of where I am, and I accept that that's going to be part of what's going to happen. But let me carry on with moving in incremental steps towards the goal. That's one advice. Another is association. You've heard the term sadhu sangha, right? Sadhu sangha. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that sangat sanjayate kama. Your disposition has everything to do with those with whom you associate. There's this saying, have you heard the name Ravana? You've heard the name Ravana. Ravana's a bad guy. Ravana's a bad guy. And he gave this teaching that says the heart is like a crystal stone that reflects the color, it takes on the color of that which it is near. So stay near that which is light and bright and spiritual, that's sadhu sangha, and then the heart gradually takes on qualities like that. Then another part of what you said is there's lots of negative reinforcement out there. I mean, it's the family, etc. There's lots of etc., but family can be a big negative. So what then you go to ask yourself the question, and I'm sure it's not a difficult answer. What's important to me? Is getting the approval of persons that have negative energy important to me? So then, if you have a clear answer, then you smile. I'll give a little example. And then you smile from the inside. And then you can smile on the outside. I'll just give a personal example. Family member. I visited my sister, who I have not seen for 16 years. And she now lives somewhere on the coastline of Florida. And so I visited her. We spent several hours together. And she, lots of family talk and family talk and family talk. It really didn't have anything to do with spiritual well-being, but she has attachment to me, her younger brother, and it's in bodily relations. So I very patiently heard all the bodily relations topic. She didn't have one question about the well-being of the soul. She knows who I am. She knows what my position is and my dedication is, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She knows all that. No inquisitiveness. I wasn't like, I had a mission in being, she wasn't putting down, she wasn't saying, go get a job, like some persons are saying to you, or make a life for yourself. That happens but in the case of my sister, it's you're happy, that makes me happy because you're happy. But really, she wants me to be something other than what I am. She wants me to be more like her and less like me. So I was smiling. I wasn't uncomfortable. So if you have a clear sense of what's important to you, what's important to you, not just in the moment, but longer picture. What's my mission in life? Their mission, their idea is get money, get a job, get money, be successful. Someone else was sharing what you just said. Someone else was sharing with me from my family. I'm not spending enough time. You're doing all this spiritual gobbledygook. You should really, I'm your well-wisher. You should really spend more time on career development, get money, and be happy. I mean, and they hammer on that. You smile. And be happy. And when people see that you're not yielding to their pressure, but you're actually happy anyways, it's attractive. So be happy. And smile. But back to the beginning part. It's not I'm at A and I'm not at Z yet. I'm not there yet. So be content, be accepting with where you are, and that the journey it takes some time to clear the clutter away, And then as soon as you clear the clutter away, it starts to come back again. You clear the clutter. You keep making the inside clean, and make it clean, and make it clean, and make it clean, and make it clean. And then that there's a contentment from a heart that's contented and clean and pure. And then you can feel feelings that you can't access today because they're of the soul, but they're covered. And you know that because you experience being with people that are, they're experiencing that. You feel it. And so you associate with those people, like the Vaidurya stone or crystal stone that takes on the colors of that which it associates with. It becomes your quality also.
I have to have a lot of compassion for
You
myself.
have to hit the button. I think you have to hit the button again.
So I have to have a lot of compassion for where I am now.
Yes, self-compassion. Yes. You may not get it from them, but you'll get it from sadhu sangha. And in fact, you just get encouragement for be who you are and continue to grow. There's a really nice, I mentioned the farm in mid-Pennsylvania, Gita Nagari. So there's a little saying, you remind me, so I won't forget. And the place where I stayed for a number of years when conducting retreats there was where Bhakti Tirtha Swami, a black sannyasi, stayed. Really wonderful. So I found on his wall something that I made a copy of, I made a photograph, and I'll distribute it to you. A friend is one who knows who you are. They accept you for who you are, and they, at the same time, they gently encourage you to grow. So associate with those people. It doesn't like acceptance for who you are is fine, and encourage you gently to grow. The incrementalism, grow in manners that are comfortable for you and work for you, and don't try to make a quantum leap and get way up there and then you come back crashing down again. Just, go step by step. Keep that association. That's a friend. Okay.
Hare Krishna. I partially understood what the presentation, and this
Somehow the sound is not coming through. Should I give you my microphone?
Am I audible now?
Okay, that's better.
Okay. Thank you. I partially understood the presentation. I understand that we all operate from different levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
And I see to be situated in a state of transcendental happiness, or to expect the actual freedom from all the miseries, it's important.
Freedom from?
Sorry?
Say the last part again.
Well, you actually spoke of detachment.
Yeah.
And I think the concept of detachment, I'd like to know more about it, because
Okay.
I'm not really aware of it. I would like to talk about my journey in specific. I think I'm very close to some people, my parents, my partner, or I think in general, many people, their children. Though we all come here alone and leave alone, and we all have our own path, and that our soul chooses its path. I lost a very good friend, one of my best friend, pretty much like my sister, more than a year ago. And At that point, when I was losing her, I constantly told to her when she was in the hospital that I honor your journey. I honor whatever your journey is and I will stand by you. But I didn't know how to process it after she left, after she chose to leave this world. Or I don't know, maybe that's my understanding. I think, or after she ended her journey with me. I'd rather call it that way. I'm very fine now. But well, when you talk about detachment, do you mean that there should be a constant thought that whoever I'm associated to, whether my partner, my mother, or my child, or whoever it is, that it's not going to be together forever and I have my path? Or can you, do I constantly have to have the thought that we are not going on this journey together, that we are a part of each other's journey? Or it'll be great if you can let me know a little more
question
about
is,
detachment.
Is that a proper understanding of what detachment is? There's a material and there's a spiritual. Just like happiness, there's material and there's spiritual. The material sense of detachment is kind of cold. I don't care. I'm a stoic. Nothing touches me because nothing touches me. I'm unto myself. And so there's a spiritual, and it's closer to what you said. That is, we're brought together. There's many, many metaphors right in the Bhagavatam. You're familiar with the Bhagavatam. So here's one. Here's two. The churning of the waves of the ocean uproots seaweed. Sometimes the seaweed comes together by the motion of the waves, and the same wave then separate the seaweed. Or another example given in the Bhagavatam. In the morning, the ladies may come to the well to gather the water for the day, and they associate with one another while they're gathering water from the well, and then they go their separate ways. They may come again for some period of time, but they go their separate ways. So there's the coming together, which is meaningful, and when there's separation, there's feelings. It's not numb those feelings because those feelings are too painful. That's not recommended. Detachment isn't make yourself numb. Detachment is what you said. We're brought together for some time, and our journey is not the identical journey, and I'm going and she's going or he's going, and for some time we're together and try to see the other person as a soul. With a holistic picture, they have a body, they have a mind, they have their needs, as do you. And then let me recognize the waves have brought us together, or the Supreme has brought us together for some time to share with one another and to serve one another like a friend. We're part of that journey. And then we're going to go some other place, and that's just fine. So my recommendation for you of processing those feelings is be very clear. It's similar to what I said to her. Be very clear with what's important to you and who you are. Because the more you can become clear of what's important to you and who you are, you have feelings of kinship, getting to know someone, developing some affection for someone, and then the parting of ways by time or circumstance or whatever. And those feelings of connection, because if it's to the degree that it's spiritual, that connection is still felt, but it looks different. when there's meeting and the other is there's separation. And that happens. That's life. There's meeting and there's separation. And when you're together, you're doing things together. Knowing, you put it very nicely, we're meant to come together for some period of time, although our journey is different. I know somebody that's 80 years old, and their life has been trauma therapy. They're really skilled at it. And one of their phrases that I like is bow to their destiny. Supposing somebody has misfortune, they don't necessarily die, but there's misfortune that comes to their life. And you reach out, and you try to be a resource to help them, and they just keep going in that unfortunate direction. You bow to their destiny. You continue to be a well-wisher for this person who is dear to you, but is no longer with you. And how do you do that if they're no longer with you? Two main things. You offer prayers, because that's the connection, is with the Supreme. And you become spiritually strong and spiritually fit. And that will automatically go to those who you hold very dear to you. It works. It's not visible on the physical plane, but it's happening on the spiritual plane. So those two things. You pray for their will, wherever their soul has gone, for their well-being. And become spiritually fit. Knowing that by so doing, those persons, especially dear to you, are going to get benefit. Just by your spiritual benefit, your spiritual progress. Some of that goes to them. And build your network of persons that are similarly situated so you can receive from them and you can give to them. And that's what a friend is. The difficulty is we're attached to the temporary. We want it to stay the same, and it's not going to stay the same. We want it to look like this, and it's going to be like this for a while, then it's going to change to that. We're attached to the temporary. So detachment is let it flow, because it's going to. This is this acceptance message. It's going to flow. Sometimes the waves are up and sometimes they're down, and that's just the way rivers move. Be really clear what your goal is, what your human form of life mission is, and pursue it. In good association, people who will help you and remind you when you get distracted or lost. And you can be the same kind of good friend to other people, according to your spiritual well-being. So make your spiritual well-being really good, so you can be in good service to others. And back to her question, it's gradual. That's the end, and I'm way over here. So work towards it steadily. Others? Anything? Yes, behind you?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Danvat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All
Hare
glories to Srila Prabhupada. I just wanted to thank you for a wonderful lecture. I follow you on the YouTube, so it was, excuse my voice, it is an honor to be able to see you in person. So very, very grateful. And I enjoyed the analogies that you're giving. I ran into a problem recently, and I felt very offended by a senior
You felt very,
Prabhu, and I said, okay, I have to keep this to myself. I cannot, voice it. I have to just get over it. But it was eating me to the point of where I felt, well, maybe I'm on the wrong journey. Maybe this is not where I'm supposed to be because it happened before. It seemed no reason. So I spoke with the Mataji that I take Bhagavatam classes with, a group, and she said, just as Krishna stands in a curved position, that is what happens. We get thrown curves. So nothing is straightforward. And in order to continue on your personal journey, if you know that this is what it is, you have to go with the curves and accept those curves and work through them and just keep on the path. So the advice that you've
beautiful.
been giving is like excellent, because I know when I was before I came to Krishna consciousness, it was, whatever doesn't break you makes you stronger. And that's how I find it, because it did after I accepted that and I pondered over it for that day and I just let it go. And I was like, okay, this is right. This is what. So I want to make sure that this was good advice.
oh yeah.
Okay.
Now, you can't go back in time and fix it.
No.
You can. You have options other than let it go. You can, in the right time, in the right circumstance, in the right mood, express. This is something that I learned from the trauma therapy lady. You can say, you take ownership of your feelings and say, I just want you to know when this was said or done, this is what I felt. I'm not holding you responsible for my feelings. I'm responsible for my feelings. But, it's important to me that I just let you know. You don't have to do that. But that sometimes helps get a little release from the feeling. If it lingers and lingers and lingers and you didn't really let it go, it's still lingering, it's an option. And because you don't know what's going to come back. What could come back is more of the same. So you don't want more of the same, so I don't think I'm going to do that.
Well, one of the reasons I felt that I needed to speak with the Mataji is because that's the first thing I did. I was taught by my father, because he was a very holy man, but he was Krishnan. He said, if you have an offense, you go to the person and you speak it to them. You don't speak it to anyone else, no gossiping. Ask them, did I take this the wrong way? Well, I did that. I said, I humbly request that you please tell me, did I cause this? What? Anyway, I was told that I had no reason to feel any way and that he didn't see anything wrong. And that was fine. But, I had to just move on from that.
You have to allow.
So they feel that they can do no wrong.
It's not the same, but it's similar to what she said. They're on a journey. They've got their own autobiography. They've got some hurts. They've got some bruises. They've got some sensitivities. They've got some protection fences up around them. And they're doing what they're doing to survive, or call it happiness. But so you honor that's where they are. And if you have an expectation, it shouldn't be like that. It should be like this. You're not the controller. You're a servant. So you well wish them as much as you can, and you move on means you just continue to be a well wisher, and it may be from a distance. That's fine, but they're on a journey, and who knows? One of the statements I like a lot is, if you knew what hardship someone has had to endure, you can easily forgive them, because something that's harsh is coming from a place of hurt inside, and it's just like preserving their dignity or their safety by being harsh. It's keeping people away. Something inside there, likely, there was a big hurt. or, multiple ones. I don't know what it is. I don't need to know. I just respect they're going through their journey and our lives intersected for some time, so let me be in the mood of service to this person rather than, the victim. Let me be in service.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
It's easier said than done, but that's a position of strength because that's who we really are. We're not enjoyers, we're servants. So be a servant of someone who's also undergoing some challenges due to who knows what, somewhere back there, some hurt, and now they're behaving the way that they're behaving because, or in part moved by that. They're making choices, but you make your choices. And be a servant. And smile. Okay, how are we doing? Anyone else? Yes? Up front here? Hare Krishna. We meet again.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation, and I particularly like the artwork you use to bring it to life.
I like artwork. I'm a visual person.
Yeah, me too.
Uh,
I wanted to ask about Maya, and in particular, I've always been very motivated by one of the comments in Prabhupada's purports that unlike material activities, 2% is good in spiritual life, whereas in material life, 99% isn't good enough. But I was wondering, you were talking about
that's nice.
the doors that you've been able to go through and found things in, and I was wondering if you could share some of the signs that you've seen to let you know that you were headed in the right direction and not just bouncing inside of Maya's circle.
Well, a few things right off the top. We're always making choices. So just going back in time when I was a little bit younger, about 50 years younger, when I was searching, I came across a whole bunch of stuff. I felt like a little kid in a candy store. And a little of this and a little of that, and I started getting a stomach ache. So I knew I had to be a little selective, not just sample. So I ruled some things out. That was helpful. I'll give an example. There was a former Harvard University professor who was really into LSD, and he went to India and he met a guru. And he came back from India promoting LSD, but also promoting chanting Hare Krishna. And I didn't know any of the background. I didn't know, it was like, so he was saying, he was doing the university circuit because he was a college professor and a charismatic fellow. Become one with the chant, chanting Hare Krishna. Become one with the chant. It was like, that's cool. Become one with the chant. So that I would continue further. And he went on at some point to say, in the beginning, there's you in the chant, and there's you in the chant, and eventually it's just the chant. And I understood what he was saying. You become Krishna. And I went, poor Krishna. Enough. So I just, stepped back. I reached a crossroads, same crossroads. I went to, the person had a home in New Hampshire. So I went with some friends, we went to his home, he opened the door, and I just blurted it out. I have this doubt, you say chant Hare Krishna this way, And the Hare Krishna people say chant Hare Krishna that way. How do I decide? He closed his eyes, got real mystical, and said something like, I can't remember exactly, just follow your heart. And I thought, I didn't say it, supposing my heart was, kill you right now. Follow your heart. There's got to be a higher answer than, what does that mean? Is there any other guidance? So that was it. I mean, I didn't know then what I know today, but it helped me make choices because I was listening carefully to his message, and it was rather clear. Become God. So here's another one. At some point, I started, as probably most of you, I started chanting on beads. And I was in pre-med. I had biochemistry major. I had, I wasn't really a good student, but I had to really work hard to get, to do well in school. So really didn't have time to do what I was told. It's nice if you can chant 16 rounds. And I was chanting 4 rounds every day, and I found it, compared to other mantras that I was also experimenting with, this one was most effective. So I thought, let me give it a try. So here goes. So I started trying to chant 16 rounds. And what I found, the door of 16 rounds, I found that by chanting 16 rounds instead of 4, I was able to sleep 2 hours less because I was so energized from chanting. I didn't try to sleep less. It just, I had a lot of energy. So because I had a lot of energy and slept less, when I did my homework after chanting, it was like a knife through soft butter. I could do my homework much more quickly and effectively. And since my homework took less time, I now had time to read Bhagavad Gita. Like a triple win. So, there was a door that I didn't see before, but I just, walked, let's see what happens. I'll walk through that door and see what happens. And some other things. Here's another one. This is me, not anybody else, but I said, I heard something that Bhaktisiddhanta, Prabhupada's spiritual master, had said. And it was, if you want to know what is spiritual life, it can't be like licking on a jar of honey. And how sweet is it? You have to open the jar, stick your finger in, and taste the honey, and then you can know what honey is. So I thinking of that metaphor, I thought, I'm on the outside of the jar. Let me dive in. Let me just kind of like jump in the pool and swim around and see what it's like. So I finished my undergraduate study. I was accepted to med school. I took a leave of absence to go live in an ashram. It wasn't like, this is it. It was like, let me see what happens. Let me swim around for a while and see what happens. And when I would meet people, I would say, I found this is very meaningful. If you have something more meaningful, please share it with me. And if you find this is more meaningful than what you have, please accept it. I'm open. I'm doing this for a while because it makes sense. But, it didn't stop. It kept going. Here was another one. I'm on a roll. When I was in undergraduate school, my parents were getting draft notices from the Army. 1A means get a uniform and go off to Vietnam. I said, forget those guys. So I didn't respond. And my father said, "You got to do something because they'll put you in jail, or you got to do something." I didn't do anything. And then finally, I was living in the ashram, and he said, "I want to take you to the draft board." So we drove to the city where there was a draft board. My dad's driving, and I'm in the car. I'm dressed like this. And then an interview with the draft board, it took about 5 minutes. They changed my status. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to do cartwheels and backflips. They changed my status. So everyone's journey is different. The obstacles and the opportunities and everything is different, but the principle doesn't change. You asked my little autobiographical sketch, and there's some things, but life is like that. You take a step. The saying is, you take a step towards Krishna, and he takes 100 steps towards you. He's waiting for you to take a step. He doesn't force you to take a step. But if you take a step, then things start to happen. And then you realize it was a kindness that wouldn't have happened if I didn't take the step. So take the step. It doesn't have to be 10 steps or 100 steps. You don't have to cross the goal line. Just take a step. See what happens. You have your antenna, your Krishna antenna. Let me get the Krishna signal and see if I get it's some indicator from Krishna. This is what he wants. And if you get a different signal, like I mentioned this other fellow, there's no thanks. Okay, I think we're done. Music is next, right? Yes? So I brought with me some prasadam from. You didn't bring it?